Hey there. So, here's a thought for the day. Every single pregnancy involves a death. Now you might say, well, that sounds cockamamie. Explain. And so here we go. So, first and foremost, every pregnancy results in the creation of new life. Now I know that people will question whether that life is separate or if it's part of a woman, if it's their prerogative to abort that child, or if they have a responsibility to have that child regardless. This is not intended to be an abortion video. What this is a video exploration into the death that happens with every pregnancy. Now, for some women, they have a pregnancy. It might be a wanted pregnancy, it might be an unwanted pregnancy. But about a quarter of all pregnancies result in miscarriage. Some of them are early miscarriages. The woman might not even know she was pregnant. Some of them happen later on after symptoms have clearly started, maybe after a positive pregnancy test. And so in those moments, the woman winds up going through a loss, a death of life. Again, I'm not here to debate whether it's a baby or not today. I'm just here to say there was new life within that womb, and now that life is gone. And miscarriage can be a very traumatic thing, absolutely, especially the further along you are in a pregnancy. I myself have had a couple of early miscarriages and can tell you firsthand that they were both wanted, and it was very painful to go through it, both physically and emotionally. And I grieved those losses myself, and I'm sure that many others who have had miscarriages have similarly grieved the loss of their pregnancies. Now the second one, again, this isn't a video about abortion, but it is abortion. There are those who willfully choose to terminate their pregnancy. And again, in those instances, a life is ended. There is a death. And again, I know that there are times where maybe an abortion isn't actually what's desired. It might be based on some type of a medical decision, especially if the life of the mother is in jeopardy. But most abortions that happen these days are actually abortions of convenience. And so, again, that's just a statement of fact. It's not intended to be controversial. But in abortion, there is a death of the life that was within that mother's womb. Lastly, there is the death to self that winds up happening. So when a woman becomes pregnant, she needs to make a choice whether or not she's going to maintain that pregnancy, whether she's going to do the things that are needed to bring new life into the world. And so that does involve self-sacrifice. It means that you're going to maybe change your diet, you're going to change what you're doing, you might have to change jobs or change your circumstances in your life. It's a giving of yourself, a death of what your ideas of life might have been before the pregnancy, for the sake of the pregnancy and for the sake of the life that comes with it. Now, there's definitely other situations where maybe it was a desired pregnancy and the miscarriage happened and the woman had already kind of died to self because she was ready for it, but then the baby subsequently died. And so there's definitely times where there's going to be more than one death involved in a pregnancy. And so it's not easy. And it's probably something that people don't necessarily think about when they're thinking about pregnancy, is that death component. But it happens every time. And again, for a desired pregnancy that goes to term, it might be an easy death to self, right? Because it was wanted, it was expected, and there was an anticipation going into the event that that was going to happen. But in all of these instances, because there is death, it means that there's also a trauma. There's something, an external force that is either being chosen or circumstantially happening that needs to be dealt with. And that means that sometimes people have grief that they have to work through as well. And like any grief journey, they're all going to look different. Some of them are going to be easier, and others are going to be very difficult. And so I think about when we're talking about pregnancies and wanted or unwanted pregnancies, that, a lot of times when people are talking about abortion, they talk about, well, what if someone's raped? Or what if there's an incest case, right? That is a trauma. That's an initial trauma that has to be dealt with. That's a trauma that is far beyond the decision of what to do with the resultant pregnancy, if there is one. But abortion is then causing another trauma on top of the initial trauma. And so this is a reason why sometimes pro-life people will actually say that, one trauma doesn't erase the other, it just compounds it. I've done grief support for over a decade now, and I can tell you that there are plenty of people who I have come into contact with over the years who just didn't even realize the trauma that they had experienced, the grief that they hadn't dealt with, until they have to deal with the death of a live person who is undeniably human in their life. So even though they may have experienced a miscarriage, or they may have gone through an abortion, or maybe they just had a full-term pregnancy, but it changed their life in ways that they didn't expect or ways that they weren't prepared for, there's still that component that needs to be reconciled. And so today, again, the main message here is that every pregnancy results in at least one death. And it's important that despite the joys that might come for some people when they get that positive result, there are those that aren't as excited about seeing that positive pregnancy test. For some people, it is a devastatingly crushing moment. And so just acknowledge where you are, accept the fact that not everybody else is necessarily going to be the same place that you are. And regardless, let's maintain respect and dignity for all persons and for all life, because all life truly is precious.